So, hello everybody and welcome to the journey of a strongly coupled monolith into Cloudland. First of all, if you would like to ask some questions during the talk, here's the QR code that you can scan with your smartphone if you want. And you can ask questions there, and at the end of the talk, if time is left, we will of course use the time to answer your questions. So, let's start with the talk. And let's start with the next slide. Perfect. So, who are the strange looking guys in front of you today? My name is Daniel Krämer, or just Daniel, and I've been a software engineer at Underscore GmbH in Cologne for about 10 years now, and I'm mainly concerned with software architecture topics, especially integration and migration tasks of any kind, and this is what took me to this nice guy and his company.
All right. Thank you.
Apart from doing software architecture and writing code still, I'm a trainer now for software architecture, of course, and a couple of other things. I'm an author writing articles, and as you can see from my badge here, I'm a speaker as well, so you may meet me at one or more conferences throughout the year. So, Lofi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel. And my name is Lofi, just like not hi-fi, right, but lo-fi. So it's actually quite easy to remember. And I'm a head of group at Sales Application Competence Center Java. So I'm old, right? So everything is based on Java, not JavaScript, no TypeScript, and so on. So at the DEVK, okay, I just say DEVK Versicherung, it's an insurance company in Germany. And yeah, I'm an old guy for the Java things. You know, I work with Java since Java 1.0, 1996, 1997, and also I'm a fan of Git transpiler, the Google Web Toolkits. So everything is all Java. All right, so Daniel, we have today our journey, right?
Exactly.
And we want to take you with us to our journey. This is the last day of the conference, right? So we can relax. I think all of you have already enough knowledge until so far, right? So this is the time that you can sit back and enjoy our movie, right? So Daniel, okay, this is as first the fact about the DEVK. Maybe one of you don't know. We are actually the German railway insurance, already old, 135 years old. We have about 7,500 employees and about 4.2 million insured person, and we also have over 15.5 million insurance policies in various assets. I think we also have about 400 IT people and about 90 until 100 Java developers. We are also working in a new technology, a new energy. Like we have a lot of startup companies. Also, one of it's called Hylane. It's actually hydrogen-powered trucks. So DEVK is actually also working in a lot of new stuff. So very interesting company. But we still based on the German railway insurance, right? So now we are going to talk about our journey. And what do you think about our holiday, Daniel? Is that like a relaxed vacation, like your nice Cuba holidays, or my nice, very nice Flores holidays?
Well, let me think a moment. No, not really. It was quite stressful in the last 4 years to do that migration, and this was because a lot of formal things had to be done, documentation had to be done, we had to plan a lot, I had to do a lot of technical tasks to communicate with people, and so it was more like something else. It was more like sightseeing in Europe. You know, where you hurry from city to city, you visit all the locations, all the nice spots, and take your photos and move on to the next one. And basically this was what we did in our migration project. A lot of tasks to do, to move on, to do the next things, communicate with people, and hurry just to keep the timelines that we had, right?
Yeah, I know that really because my family, I come from Jakarta, right? Java Island and Jakarta city. And if my family come here, they want to see within the 5 days, 20 or 10 main cities in Europe. So we just going fast and make a photo and go back afterward after 5 days. So very stressful. So it's our journey, some kind of like that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, that's good. As Daniel told us, we would take you in our journey. So I choose one of the island from Indonesia because we have Java already, right? We have a city Jakarta, and yesterday I heard the project Semeru. So it's also a mountain in Indonesia. So this time I take you to the Flores Island. It's also an island in Indonesia. Flores means actually flowers. So if you have another Java project or something like that, you need a name, just take the name. It's quite nice. Flores means flowers, right? So Daniel, let's start.
Yeah, let's start with our journey. And what is usually the first task that you do when you want to do a journey? Well, basically you pick up a traveling brochure. Now, it may be digital, may it be analog, no, it doesn't matter at all. And you pick up some nice spaces, spots, cities, countries that you like, and yeah, look at that. And the next step, if you have decided for something, you take a closer look. Now, what cities do I want to visit? What activities do I want to attend to? Now, when do I travel? By what companies and stuff? And then, of course, you have to do some fine planning. Now, you have to look at the dates. When does my plane go? Now, when do I have to be in which city to attend maybe a conference or whatever? And you have to do a lot of planning, actually, if you do a round trip like that. And, of course, the most relaxing thing, the most interesting thing is the execution, meaning that you can relax.
Is that so? Is this the most nice thing, or actually the going
somehow.
home part afterwards? I don't know.
It depends on the location that you do, actually, right?
All right.
So it should be in theory, but let's have a look at that later on. So finally, as you said, you happily go home, at least I hope so. And afterwards, you can do exactly what we do today. You have a conclusion. You can talk with your friends, with colleagues. You can show them your photos that you took. Can tell about the experiences that you made with foreign countries and people. And as we will see later on, the same is true for migrating a monolith to the cloud, right?
Yeah, I think this is the most funniest and nicest thing, right, to tell people about the journey. All right.
So now it's over. Everything is done. Everything works fine, and we can happily talk about that. And a lot of things have to be done beforehand.
All right.
Alrighty. So let's have a look at the different aspects, the different steps in detail. So the first one would then be to have a look at the travels brochure, which in our case means have a look at the system context we are doing the migration in, right?
All right. So the things we took actually in this part is maybe one of you know about the TLE framework, technology, organization, and environment framework. So everything is putting around, right? So you cannot just see the technology alone, or organization alone, or the environment alone. You have to put it together. And this is, in our case, is quite a complex because in the organization form, we have a classical project management still. This is a company, 125 years. You cannot just go directly to agile, right? So you have something in classic, something in agile, of course. So we have here classical project management versus agile with tribes, right? So that's quite complicated. And the process, of course, is being established, but very dynamic, right? So everything can change very fast within the time. And we still have to ask the project management for the money, right? So at the end, if you are migrate something, you need money for that part. And that's completely on the different story. So we have multiple squads and a shared code base, because this is a monolith, a really huge monolith one. So a lot of teams work on the same code base. And the second one is the environment part. We have parallel at that time in this part is actually we also develop new applications, so based on microservices or directly in cloud and so on. So this is also a lot of things happening, so you are not alone there, right? So simultaneously happening development of new products with cloud and microservices. But luckily, in technology part, we have already established our internal developer platform. Maybe you have heard about that one. So we have a team which actually just doing the Kubernetes stuff, the Docker part, the CI/CD pipeline, and so on, the whole infrastructure for the platform, so we can use it. That's also the good part, because if we have to take care about that, we'll be finished within the 3 years, right? So that is actually the things. To have the system context, you also need to know what kind of application you want to actually migrate to the cloud. We have sales systems. This is the most important part in insurance. Maybe if you heard about the business of insurance, the sales is the one you need to have, right? You cannot stop the sales. And this is the most important part in the EVK. So we have a sales system which consists of the consultant part. So everyone will want to buy insurance, need to have a consultation, just like a banking product, right? So you cannot just buy, or you cannot just say something insurance to someone, right? You need to have a good documentation about that. So you need to have a consultation for that part. We have a customer relationships management system which we bought from a company, and we also make a new or extension of that. And the last part is actually the quite important part, is the pricing quote part. So if you are interested in one of insurance, you need to know how much does it cost, and the data of you, of course. If you have a health insurance, they want to know everything about you, and the contracts afterward, right? So you, after a certain part of date, you get the insurance. And our migration Monolith is actually the last part, because we are lucky to have that the consultant part and the CRM part is already moved to cloud. They are also huge Monolith application, but our last part is actually the third system. So just show you the structures. As Daniel told us, right? This is the travel brochure. We need to collect the information. So at the end, we need to know what kind of architecture do we have, what kind of application do we have, what kind of database do we have. So we need to know about the whole stuff first. And it's quite complex. And also the network, firewall, the load balancers, web servers, we all have to know about that part in our on-premise system, right? This is the key figures about our sales application Monolith. 3 years project, 4 huge Oracle databases, about 57 million records with blobs, because we could save a lot of things as a blob, as a PDF in blobs in the Oracle database. That's about 8 terabyte blobs in Oracle. 128 VMware applications. Now, if I take a look at this one, I'm really happy now, because maybe you have heard Broadcom has bought the VMware, right? And they increased the whole price. So 128 VMware is not bad. We have about the component for the Java, about 450,000 log line of code, and the web application itself with some web services, I think. About also 460,000 log, so it's about 1 million line of code. There's about 42 domain applications, so each of the insurance has its own part, right? So this is the life insurance, this is the health insurance, and so on. And we have 8 teams in our tribe, right? So we are in one team, and we are actually the one who manage the whole stuff, right? So this is actually the very stressy one.
Yeah.
All right. This is our strategies, how we move towards the AWS Cloud. On the left side, we have actually the on-prem. We have the technology. We have Oracle database. We have VMware. We have ActiveMQ for our messaging. We have for monitoring and logging. That's CheckMK, DocWS, and we have Jenkins build and deployment. We have already Ansible to automate the whole deployment process on our on-prem. And in the middle, we have GitLab and Sonar Aquasec for the security. We integrate also Renovate, Open Rewrite, hopefully next time. And on the right side, we have the internal platform, developer platform. It consists of Kubernetes, AWS, Docker, PostgreSQL, of course. It's based on the Aurora database. And we have Kafka, Helm chart. And for monitoring, we use Elastic APM, still check MK and Opsgenie for the whole monitoring for the operations, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we use, instead of the Jenkins build pipeline, we use GitLab CI/CD at the end. Yeah, and the 3 strategies, you can take a look. What we have done is actually the porting one. So it means in the middle, we make a replatform, we lift, but we need to be a bit reshape because the basic technology changed, right?
Yep.
We have to move to Docker and Kubernetes, and it's less cost than rewriting, because on the left side, if you go for the modularization, you need to rewrite everything into the microservices. It's the best, maybe, but we also lose a lot of knowledge in the code, right? So this is the thing. It's not easy to just remove everything.
Yeah, and remember, we have 1 million lines of code, right?
Correct.
So it's hard to rewrite everything of that.
Yeah. Maybe we're still there 30 years.
Perhaps, yeah.
All right. That's good. So,
okay, so much to the travel brochure and the system context we're talking about. And the next thing would then be to concretize our journey to actually pick a country that we want to visit. And regarding the migration, that means doing some preliminary examinations, just to make sure everything works as expected before we start, and to do some proof of concepts, especially for the database side. And to provide some details about that, now we did a proof of concept for AWS Postgres Aurora, because we had to move a lot of data to the cloud, to Postgres, and to a different database management system. And we did a lot of tests with that, and finally came up with solutions that were feasible. And of course, the goal of that whole story was to test if everything works as expected, to get measures out of that, to estimate the effort that is necessary to do the migration altogether, right? And we tested if it is possible to migrate the databases alone to the cloud and leave the applications on-prem, and if that works out well. So we had to do a lot of investigations before we could start our migration. Yeah. And another thing that's very important, especially in German and especially in insurance companies, is the topic formal outsourcing. Because you can't just take an application and its data and just move that to the cloud as you like. That's not possible. Because you have a lot of data regulations that you have to apply to. You have security concerns that you have to care about, and documentation that you have to do, that you need to get approved by certain instances just to apply to German law, to apply to European law, and it's not that easy to do that. And of course that contributes to the project in a huge way. So we will see later on. Yeah, all right. This is the graphical stuff from our former outsourcing. It's not that easy. Daniel told us, and we have FIGHT. This is typical German. I think it's some kind of insurance IT requirements from a federal financial authority, BaFin, they call it. You have to take care of that part, and this is all the point you need to take care of, right? So you have IT security, architecture, Works Council, also, right? Works Council, Betriebsrat is also a very important part to take care about that one. They don't want just to have, you go to the cloud and that's it. Yep. They need to have so-called, agreement about how to go to cloud and so on and so on. So quite a lot of tasks you have to do this, and we also use actually an extension of Arc42, we call it Wikit42, to structure our documentation, because it's also important that we have such a documentation which is easy to fill in and to generate afterwards. Okay, so what did we learn during this phase, during the preparation phase? Well, AWS is highly complex. It's not as easy as you would imagine, just clicking some services, connecting them, and you have everything running up in the cloud and you're happy and fine. But you have to learn a lot of things about concepts, virtual private clouds, about network configuration, subnets, routing, and whatnot. And you have to be aware of that because otherwise your applications won't work in the cloud. So application layers such as JPA become in handy there because you can more easily replace things under the hood, which is of course a nice thing to have if you change the environment you are in. But still there are some adjustments that you have to do regarding authorization, for example, regarding deployment, regarding build pipelines, to start with. And it's not just a lift and shift, just as Lofi pointed it out at the beginning. It's not that easy. It's not that you take your WAR file, deploy that to a container, deploy that to a Kubernetes cluster, and you're fine with that, because you have to deal a lot of about configuration, about security, about network routing, and yeah, you have to know that. So the thing about the formal outsourcing is, as you can imagine, it is a project within a project. So you have to do a lot of documentation, you have to do a lot of talks with people, get approvals, get agreements, just to be fine with regulatory demands, and that takes some time. And we found out that you can more or less define a specific person that does that throughout the whole project. So you really need to spend resources on that, because otherwise you will be ready on a technical level and you still can't deploy to production because regulations say no, it's not possible because we don't have the approval for that. Of course, that's a problem. So you start that as early as possible. We really recommend to do that and to be aware of that, especially when you are in Germany and especially when you are in insurance companies or banking financial systems.
Yes, that's very true.
So when we have planned our trip, now we come to the point where we have to define what we would like to do. Now, what cities we would like to visit, what activities to attend to, what routes to take, what do on which day, and so on. And regarding the project, that means creating a roadmap and to do some detailed planning work, right?
Yes.
So this is what we did, defining a roadmap. Just as an overview, so everyone knows what the main steps are. That we start with migrating the databases, continue with the applications in a specific manner, and last but not least, reconfigure networks, and that it takes months to proceed. And it's nothing that can be done in a sprint or so. And each and every team that is somehow influenced by the migration knows what to do and where are the points where they need to help us and where we need to talk to them and where we have specific demands.
Yeah, and also the development is continuing, right? So you cannot stop something and come on, let's make a pause and let's go the migration alone, and that's won't work.
That's how things work, right?
Yeah.
We still have to sell contracts.
Yes.
Because that's how Deutsche Eisenbahnversicherungsgesellschaft make their money. So we have to keep that into account.
Yes.
But that's not enough. Now, roadmap is rather coarse-grained. It defines milestones, it defines packages of work, but it doesn't talk about tasks that much, and therefore you have to detail that. And that's what you can see on the right-hand side here. Now we did a lot of planning regarding what to do in what sprint, defining dependencies between the tasks, having a look at which personnel was present in which month and who could do what, and to actually assign work so that
and
it
also
could be
holiday,
done
right? Because
holidays
right.
and whatnot, illness. So you have to plan with that, and as you can see, there were a lot of tasks that had to be planned, and there had a lot of dependencies between them, as you can see, for example, here. Of course, you have to refine that, and because of course, it's nothing you do at the beginning and it sticks forever. So you have to iteratively improve that and refine that, of course. But you have to have it because otherwise nobody knows what to do and when to do, and you can't hold your deadlines. Okay, so what are the lessons learned here? Basically, it's very important, as you can imagine, to establish that roadmap very early in the project so everyone knows what to do. And as equally important it is to actually refine that plan and to communicate that plan so everyone knows what to do, and you don't run short on people or you don't run short on support from other teams because they are busy with other tasks because they didn't plan to actually support you. And the next big
and that's one also I think we have to do it regularly, right? So
absolutely.
always also
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out. So it definitely is an iterative task to do. And another big thing is a shift in mindset, because in the past we had teams responsible for databases, for application development, for deployment, even for release management and for whatnot. And well, we have the XSecOps approach now. Now that means we are responsible for merely everything. Developing an application, deploying it into the cloud, securing that application, keeping track of performance, having a look at the monitoring systems, doing support for their tickets, and not only for the applications themselves, but for the databases they use as well. And I don't know about you, but Lofi and I, we ain't no database experts. So we have to acquire knowledge in order to be able to operate those systems and their databases. And you have to know that if you want to go in the cloud and want to use that DevOps or DevSecOps model, right? So otherwise it won't work. And another big thing is you have to be aware of what artifacts you are responsible for. Because if DevSecOps means, well, I have to care for my own applications and to ensure that they work. So what are my applications, basically? I need to know that. So, and what are applications and perhaps shared code between teams that other people have to take responsibility for? That has to be crystal clear, and if not, a lot of communication work is necessary.
Correct. And maybe it's also interesting to see if you will need something to have the responsibility for such a things. We have the so-called Reiki matrix, right? It's also very famous. Actually, I could just use it. That's very good part to see what kind of responsibility, accountability, consulting, and informed. What kind of role do you have there?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. All right, so the next thing is the funny part, at least we hope that it is, the execution, which of course means doing the actual migration that has been planned before, right? So, this consists of a couple of steps. Well, the first thing is on a vacation, what you usually do is to visit the attractions, visit the cities you would like to visit, have some fun, relax. And for us, that meant doing the migration tasks, doing implementation, reconfiguration and things. And as Lofi pointed it out, we had to switch the build server from Jenkins to GitLab CI. And as we will see, there are differences between those. So another thing is taking those applications into Docker containers and deploying them to Kubernetes. But I can tell you it's almost the smallest part of that. It's not that difficult to do that nowadays, and there's a lot more to do in other areas. For example, monitoring, logging, alerting. Because you have to use other systems, and you have to think about how to centralize that, because you don't want to do that a couple of times in different systems. Nobody can handle this. And as we pointed out at the beginning, remember those 8 terabytes of blobs that are stored in the Oracle databases, and we thought about how to handle that and if it's a good idea to keep it, and obviously we were told no, don't migrate 8 terabytes of binary data into Postgres in the cloud, but use something else that is suited for storing binary data, such as an S3 bucket to store that. And therefore we had to define how to migrate the data and how to access the data consistently for each and every system within this whole monolith, right?
Correct.
So, I have to remember. Another thing is we can't do this migration on our own. As we pointed it out, there are a lot of teams involved in even creating the applications, and there are even more teams involved in doing operations stuff, doing networking stuff. So we had to talk to a lot of different folks, and well, they live in different contexts. They talk in different languages, so to say, different technical languages, and they have different models to work with, different methodologies. Not all of them work in an agile manner, and not all of them are available when we need them most. So,
like I told you before, right? The environment is also very important to see, because we have a mixed environment here, from agile to the classic.
Yeah, definitely. And if you have to do a network reconfiguration and you have never heard about how to configure a reverse proxy or what, now you need people who are aware of that. So you have to get those people, and this was really challenging throughout the project. So let's deep dive at least a little bit into the technologies and what we could get out of that. And first of all, as we pointed out, we had to migrate from Oracle to Postgres. Well, they are quite comparable in feature sets, at least with regard to the features that we needed for our applications. But of course, there are differences in the details. For example, in encoding and collation, which influences sorting of entries, for example. So if you get a specific sort order out of Oracle, that doesn't necessarily mean you get the same sort order out of Postgres. If you like that and if you want to have that, you have to configure that explicitly because defaults are different, right?
Yes.
Not to talk about the fine-tuning mechanisms such as native queries and indices, right? Another thing is JPA, as I pointed it out. JPA certainly helps because it is an abstraction layer about relational database management systems. So when switching from one to the other, it should be quite simple. And in fact, it makes it quite simple. But still, there are limitations. Because, as I said, we have configuration defaults which are very different, and JPA doesn't account for that at all. So you have to care that for yourself. And if you want to switch between database management systems on the fly, for example, you want to keep the dev environment to Oracle and switch, or I don't know what, testing environment to Postgres and want to switch dynamically, you have to build that your own. You can't just say, oh, I want to go to Postgres today and to Oracle tomorrow, but you have to build the feature switches into the applications. Now for database URLs, for database drivers, for SQL dialects, not to forget about that. And even in the code, there are differences, for example, in handling blobs. That's not the same in Postgres and in Oracle, even if it's JPA. So not to think about things like triggers and nasty database links from one database to the other, because that's not going to work anyway. So you have to find different solutions for that.
Yeah, we have to think that this is a monolith, right? So you have a really huge database with the whole database links and so on. So we have to take care about that, right?
Exactly. So we had Terraform to automate the creation of infrastructure, infrastructure as code basically. And of course that helps because you can easily reconfigure databases. You can try something out. You can experiment with settings and with sizing, for example. But well, this may take quite a long amount of time to reconfigure a database that is worth a couple of terabytes of data, and you are blocked within the time frame, and everyone else is blocked as well. And even more nasty, some of those configuration changes you do, for example, the collation we talked about, it's not possible to do that live. Now, if you do that with Terraform, what it does basically is it drops the database that you have, containing all of the data you have in there, and you have to recreate it from scratch. And in case you don't want that, now you have to do snapshotting, you have to restore that afterwards, and there's a lot of additional effort that you have to put in there. And well, if you just click yes, apply those changes to the database, well, all your testing data that you migrated so intensively is completely gone. Nice. So you have to keep that in mind. It's not just about doing configuration changes, hit apply, and that's it. There's a lot of more to it. Okay, speaking of the 8 terabytes of blobs, which we had to move to S3, well, there are a couple of approaches to do that. Well, basically, before we did the migration, we had a situation like this. Now we had some services that were rather oriented at business, and there were rather technically oriented services like the file store service, which does exactly what the name suggests. Now it stores files. So when files are completely stored within an RDBMS, such as Oracle, that's an easy thing to do. You store the binary data, you store metadata into the table, you can rely on ACID transactions, you commit, fine, that's it. Well, at the point you switch to S3 and you keep the metadata in the Oracle database, what we did here because of compatibility backward reasons, because some of those monolithic applications required those metadata to be present in this database. Now then you have to be aware of that, you get a distributed system, right? There's a database storing your metadata that is compliant to ACID transactions, and there is binary data that you stored into S3 buckets, but there is no direct link between them. So you have to extend the file store service, which is okay, you can do that. It's not a hard thing to implement actually, but you have distributed data and distributed transactions. You don't want to have that. So basically you are eventually consistent. What does that mean? So if you store data to the database, so the metadata to the database, and afterwards you store the binary data that belongs to that in the bucket, and that bucket fails for some reason. Network is done. Oops. Well, what to do with the metadata in the database? Now you have to implement compensation instead of rollback. You have to keep that in mind, and it's really a hard task to do. And I can tell you, we implemented that. We're quite aware that we did it right. We had a lot of integration tests and unit tests that went well, and we shipped into
Production.
and I think a couple of weeks later we saw inconsistencies we couldn't explain, and we had to analyze that and find out, oh, there was a mistake in that file store service that led to malicious data or broken data in the database, and there was no blobs in the bucket because storing data didn't work out, and the rollback never happened in the database.
I think this is the hard part, right?
This is really the hard part, and we're only talking about two kinds of data sources, right? It's not distributed over 8 or whatever. So it's just a database and the blob store, and even there it's quite a complicated task to do. Versus the asset transactions we had before, which everything did as we wanted to do automatically. That's no longer possible. So we decided to build the S3 capability into the file store service. So every business service that uses this functionality can use the bucket on its own, right? Just because to keep architecture as simple as could be, and not to introduce more changes than necessary during the migration.
And we have introduced this part before we migrate the Oracle database to the Postgres, right?
Yeah, that's an important point.
Therefore, it's still Oracle database, everything.
Exactly. I mean, we of course migrated those 8 terabytes of data to S3 before migrating the Oracle database to Postgres.
Yes.
So not to migrate 8 terabytes of data you don't need anymore. Okay, alternatives. Well, obviously we could have encapsulated S3 using a dedicated microservice, so to say. A facade service, it is called on this diagram here, but it would have been a bit better in regards of encapsulation, because the services using those S3 data storage doesn't need S3 credentials to use, doesn't need firewall configurations in order to access that, and it would have been easier there. But on the other hand, it would have been a change in architecture, and well, it's an additional network hop, right? And an additional service you would have to maintain, to keep patched, to keep running, to maintain, to monitor. And well, as we didn't have that much time to implement the whole thing, now we decided to stick to a direct S3 access. Now just a few details here. All right, Mr. AAM, please tell us about that.
That's also the huge point before we move the whole application to a cloud. We need to take a look at our identity access management part, right? So we have single sign-on and so on. So before that, we still use OpenAM for that part, but the situation is quite different to have that in on-premise systems, because you have such an agent in all the VMware stuff, right? To take care of the request and to get the response for the authorization and authentication. So there's a lot of possibilities what you can do in this part. I just make it's quite fast. You can do it gateway, you can do a direct integration into that application, just use Spring Security and that's it. Or you can use an Kubernetes sidecar. We use this one with OAuth proxy, and because it's just similar to the agent architecture, right? So it's quite similar to the on-premise situation at the end. Just take care of this part before, right? Because we have a lot of trouble also with the whole identity access management part. And as I told you, we also have documentation. This is very, very important for each of our release, right? So we generate the whole templates, how to document actually in Confluence, and after that we create the content, we fill in the whole stuff in Confluence. Each night there will be a completely automatically export to PDF, and we save the result into the PDF, into the S3 content repo, and so you can actually review the snapshot version every night or afterwards and the day after. And then if you think, okay, now we want to release the application, the service, we actually make a tagging on that Confluence page, and then there will be an automatic merge request for our GitLab merge, and then afterwards the operation part should also take care of that and accept the merge request. So at the end, the result, the accepted one, will be uploaded into the SharePoint, because that's all the documentation we have. We have it all in SharePoint. So this process is also very important to automate, because you will have a lot of times where you have to update the stuff, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do that manually each and every day. So
correct.
Yeah.
So that's also a very, very interesting part actually of
Yep.
our migration.
Okay, so speaking of the lessons learned regarding the execution phase, so the migration itself. Now, as we pointed out, now we had to migrate the CI/CD pipelines and the build process altogether from Jenkins to GitLab, because GitLab was set as the tool of choice for the cloud environments. And well, as you can imagine, it is not possible to do that one by one, because feature sets are somehow different. Now, for example, in Jenkins, you can have as many different pipelines as you want for a single project. Well, considering GitLab CI, you have a GitLab CI pipeline definition for every project, and it contains one pipeline. That's
Correct.
it. So if you have multiple builds, such as nightly builds, what do we have? Release builds, hotfix builds, release candidates. Now, it's not possible with GitLab. If you use the default, so you have to be creative and have to be able to write your own scripts in order to enable that. And this requires a lot of work. So it's not an easy thing to do, to just replace an CI/CD server under the hood. No? Yeah, we had the special requirement that we had to be compatible with the old world, so deployment in on-prem, and to be able to deploy to the cloud. So it was even more complicated because we had to keep the release candidate builds, for example, that were used in the on-prem world, and on the other hand, had to ship the same artifacts that were created during the release process to all clouds.
Because we cannot stop the release, right? That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. and you have to consolidate that, because otherwise you don't want to have a build on Jenkins and another build on GitLab and get different artifacts from different kind of build systems. No, that's not going to work. So you have to find a solution for that. Yeah, monitoring, alerting is an interesting topic as well. And as far as we can tell, it's advisable to start with a minimal setup. So there's a lot of fancy things that you can do in the cloud now to monitor your applications, to gather data and to show that, and to define alerts, but stick to that what you really need. So basically, you want to know is your application healthy, is it reachable, does it work, what about response times, and what about errors and the logs, for example, and this is basically it. Don't make it more complicated as it already is. Now stick with a basic setup and extend it if necessary. So, as I pointed out before, it is important to centralize that. Now you don't want to have a couple of logs for each and every service in different directions and have to figure out how to connect them afterwards yourself, but you need tools to handle that. There are tools outside to do this, the Elastic in our case, but again you have to be aware of how to deal with the tools, how to handle them, how to configure them, how to use them, and that makes the thing challenging but also interesting, of course.
Yes.
So, and last but not least, we were talking about insurance data, such as life insurances, or even insurances against illness and stuff like that. And you have very, very sensitive data to care for. At least we had. And you can't just log that out to the cloud, ship that to your Elastic cluster and the cloud and be happy with that. But take into account that the data is securely stored and deleted in regularly.
That's very important.
Regular intervals.
Right? Yeah.
So in 20 days in our case.
Yeah.
All right, about the blob migrations. As I pointed out, now you have to you have to keep in mind that you have distributed systems. Means that you have, basically eventual consistency and have to deal with all kinds of inconsistencies yourself. That's an important thing to take away, and you have to keep that in mind and develop concepts for that. And another important thing that I think saved our life in the end was doing load tests, just to see if the application behaves correctly on the load in the new environment. So the database behaves consistently, the application does, and so does the network itself. So everything is fine, and you should really do that and not forget that, because otherwise you will have problems when you're in production, right?
And security and penetration testing, that's also our requirement, right?
Yeah, especially if you choose a different environment, such as a cloud, which is accessible by everyone. Yeah. All right, so quick words about the homeward journey, which means finishing the whole thing. So speaking of the migration process, that means finishing the migration and handing everything over to production.
Yeah, just like in holidays, right? So if you go to holidays at the end after 3 weeks or so, maybe you think, oh, come on, I would like to go home and sleep on my bed again. You know, you don't care what is it. This is also the last part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the basic takeaway here is, without going too much into detail, that you have to be very, very careful when you do the planning. Plan very explicitly, assign tasks to people explicitly, be very, very detailed about that, and yeah, to keep in mind what to do, when to do, and to do by who. That's very important here. And you have to be aware of that there will be problems if you go in production.
Yes.
There will definitely be problems. That's not it's not bad at all, but you have to inform people about that, to expect that, and to be aware of the impacts that might come. And this is very important here. Okay, lessons learned. Basically, I already mentioned that, so let's skip it for the moment. So come to the conclusion fast. As you saw, we did a very complex migration of a very, very large monolithic system and the databases into the cloud, and there were a lot of pitfalls that we fell into, of course, and that we can
But also
learn
a lot
from.
of interesting things, right?
Very, very
For us,
interesting
right?
things.
To learn new things, you know.
Yeah,
in cloud.
absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
In most cases, you learn it the hard way, and this is what we did most time. But at least, yeah, we can use the knowledge later on. So be very, very careful when you plan, and yeah, keep in mind that there are dependencies between tasks and that you need other people to do that.
Yeah, and also it's very important that you have a continuous support, right? So at least 2 or 3 people. We have here also someone which also in our team, and thank you very much that we just stay there until the end of the project, because at the end 3 years is a long time, right? So the people also already changes and so on. That's really complicated if you don't have someone who really stay stuck on that part for 3 years. And yeah, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you get the jab from left, right, from top, you know, from the management. They only want to know when will you be done with the whole migration, right? They don't interested in how you do it or whatever. At the end, the date, the D date, is actually the most important part from the top management, right? We know all that.
Yeah.
But stay positive and try to fight for that part. And I think if you do that, you can manage that.
Yeah.
And everything takes longer than you think. I think this is the things we see everywhere. You know, the migration on GitLab and doing the database migration and so on. Everything takes longer than you think.
Prepare for the unforeseen. It will come, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so let's come to an end here. If you want to stay in contact with us, now we are available at the conference, of course, for about a couple of hours.
Yes.
And you can contact us, of course, via Xing or LinkedIn, for example. And not to forget about that, Underscore has a conference booth at the conference, and you can find that right between, I think, Cinema 6 and 5 on the floor. It's located between Vardin and Oracle, and it's not that far away from the toilet. So you will see us, and we will be at the conference booth for a couple of times now after the talk. So if you would like to discuss things, ask your questions, then this would be an opportunity for you, to get in contact with us. Now, since time is more than over, now we won't have time to answer the questions now, I think.
All right. Thank you very much.